candidates. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening statements, 2 minutes for closing statements. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to answer the question. Thank you for staying within the parameters, too, candidates. One question will include opportunities for each candidate to ask one question of the other candidate. So let's get started. Aurora is rich with history. I guess we'll do the opening statements. Let's start. Okay, opening statement. Richard Irvin, 2 minutes, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank The Voice for putting on this forum, as well as Reboot Aurora. And that's really why we're here today. So we can talk about what we need to do to reboot Aurora. And not that, Aurora is a bad city. We all love Aurora. Everybody up here, we love this city. Otherwise, we wouldn't be putting ourselves through the rigors of running for office if we didn't. But just saying we love this city is not enough. And in the last 3 debates, we've talked about a lot of things. But now I think today it's time to distinguish, for me to distinguish the difference between me and all the candidates. And I think one of the major distinguishments between me and the other candidates is I'm not government. Let's start down at the end. Ms. Chapler-Villa. She's been in Springfield for 14 years working with Madigan. That she is government. That's government, full-time government. We've got Rick Guzman. You'll hear him say he's worked for 2 governors and now works for the mayor's office. That's government. You'll hear Mike say that he's been in city council for 32 years. Although a part-time job, 32 years is a long time. He is government. I'm the only one up here that for the last 14 years, my full-time job has been business. So what I want to do is bring my ability to successfully run a business to the city of Aurora. Now, I've been a leader my whole life. From the time when I was in the Gulf War during combat, from the time when I was a community-based prosecutor in the city working with police to stop crime and bring it to the low levels that we see today, to the time where I opened my own business right here in downtown Aurora, to being on the city council for the last 10 years, understanding how city government works, but still having a mind toward business. That's what difference I bring to this mayoral race, and I'd like to bring that as the mayor of the city of Aurora.
Rick Guzman.
Well, good evening, everyone. I also want to thank The Voice and Reboot Aurora, everyone who put this together, and all of you for coming out and getting involved in the next great chapter of our city. This is our 4th forum, and we've got a few more, so I thought I'd do a little different type of statement. I didn't know I'd be following Alderman Irvin, but I sort of thought I would talk a little bit about this idea that being in government or that being in the mayor's office doesn't necessarily make you a leader. And I think I would submit to you that being a leader is about being able to bring people together and deliver effective results. And I'd invite anybody to talk to the developers of the St. Charles Hospital who just brought in a more than $20 million development to revitalize one of our most historic structures downtown. And they'll tell you that project wouldn't have happened without my leadership. I'd invite you to talk to the developer who is bringing the forthcoming Aurora Arts Center to downtown, who's going to be bringing a restaurant, a school for performing arts, partnering with the Paramount, to bring hundreds of thousands of people to visit downtown and more jobs. And that developer and the Paramount will tell you that project wouldn't have happened without my leadership. I'd invite you to talk to one of the more than 100 people who are living or growing up in a home that their family owns, because my nonprofit, Emmanuel House, helped hardworking families buy their first homes in Aurora. And this organization was recognized last year as one of the 100 most innovative organizations on the globe as a Classy Award finalist, which is sponsored by the Stanford Social Innovation Review and the United Nations Foundation. And they said that the leaders in these organizations represent the brightest minds and the boldest leaders who are solving innovation today. And so I would submit to you that my leadership and my administration will be defined by those same collaborative efforts to move our city forward into its next great chapter.
Mike Mike Seville.
Schools, public safety, older neighborhoods, and economic development. These are my campaign issues and why I'm running to be your next mayor. I am Mike Seville. I'm the current 6th Ward Alderman. Been Alderman since 1985. Running to be, again, your mayor. Anybody can say that they're a leader, but I like to say through the course of this campaign, that past is prologue. So go to my website, MikeSevilleForMayor.com, kind of a catchy title, and look exactly at what I've done. Everything that I've done since 1985, and I'm currently in my 9th term as Alderman, a record of on City Council. Everything that I've done, all the resolutions, all the ordinances, all the policies that I've made, is on there for you to look at. I'm running a very transparent and open campaign so you can be better informed and make the appropriate decision. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Aurora, lived in the 6th Ward all my life. My mother used to like to say, Mike, you didn't fall too far from the tree. I live a block and a half from where I grew up. So I love Aurora, went to School District 129, graduated from West High, went to college, received a degree from the University of Illinois in Chicago, nationally in political science, right? So in 1980, then Jack Hill, when he was mayor, appointed me on the planning commission. So that's really how I got my start in being a public service for people in Aurora. In 1985, I was appointed on the 6th Ward Alderman. So I've been serving the people of Aurora for many years, and I love to be of service to people. Now, in terms of public safety, I co-sponsored the crime-free housing ordinance since October of 2008. When we adopted that unanimously, crime has fallen precipitously. What it did was it made landlords more accountable and more responsible, and there were penalty sections if they were not. Other things I like to talk about later on is economic development and schools. Now, hopefully, I'll get to that later on. Thank
you. Linda Chapel.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for everybody coming out to this really important discussion. My name is Linda Chapel-Lavia, and I'm running for mayor in Aurora. Let me get right down to the point on why I'm running for mayor. We need a rock-solid commitment to transparency, accountability, and ethics in the city. We need an economic development and jobs plan that's going to be for the whole entire city, not just downtown. And we need a sustainable budget. And as a result of that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be fighting crime and gangs. We're going to have more resources for our children, our teachers, so they can have a bright future. And last, we're going to have an amazing ability to attract jobs and businesses here to Aurora. If we commit to these priorities, the aspirations of everybody in this room and the whole entire city of Aurora will be known. 50 years ago, my parents came here to Aurora and raised their children, and I raised my children here. After graduating from the University of Illinois, I served the United States Army as an officer. I met a pretty terrific guy. We opened up a few businesses. In 2002, I ran and won for election of a state representative seat, which I still hold today, and I represent a majority of this room. In the last 14 years, I have brought back millions of dollars to make your lives better and a more positive outlook here in Aurora. If you don't remember anything I say tonight, please remember this. I love Aurora. I love its rich traditions. I love its history in the communities, but we can be doing better. And when I'm mayor, we're going to play to win. You know, Mayor Weisner deserves a lot of accolades on where we've come, but to sit back and just put it in cruise would be a huge mistake. Our best days and our brightest days for Aurora are yet to come, and I'm going to be looking forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you so much.
We will start and rotate at the other end of the table. The mics go and come down. We have questions that we at The Voice have put together. We have some help from Reboot Aurora, and we have some nice questions from you in the audience. So we'll try to get to as many as we can and have a good representation across section. Aurora is rich with history. Where do you stand on preservation of that history and the neighborhoods which have been designated historic?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because in my ward, there are 3 historic districts out of the 4. So I'm very passionate about historic districts and the need for them and the reason why they were created. love the old architecture. I love the older buildings in town. We have a rich, rich history dating back when we were founded in the 1830s. The issue that I have, though, is we need to fund the historic district programs more. We created the guidelines, and when it was first created in the early 1980s, the first district in the southeast side of town, we told the neighbors that were creating this, okay, we'll create a historic district. It'll be your guidelines. You write the guidelines, and we'll give you monies allocated to support that. So there was like a carrot and a stick approach. It worked very well. It was so successful. There were 3 more created in my ward: Riddle Highlands, Tanner District, and Palace Historic District. And we were funding it. We had adequate staff time allocated to that as well to enforce these guidelines and to give people good advice on how to uplift and rehab their homes in a historic preservation nature. However, since the Great Recession, we haven't been doing that. I, as mayor, will start doing that from day one, making sure we have qualified staff, making sure we have the programs funded to be able to support the residents so they can maintain their homes in the historic nature, abiding by the guidelines, and also making sure that we have a really good preservation commission being able to oversee that as well. So I think we have a rich and lush history in our community for historic preservation, and I will continue to support that as mayor.
Aurora is a very old city with so much rich history, and I think it's very important that we maintain the charm that makes us Aurora while we progress into the future. Now, it's very important that we maintain our preservation and historic qualities, and we use our community development block and CDBG funds to do a lot of that today. At City Council, I'm consistently in planning and development voting on projects that will maintain our beauty and our preservation here in the city. But at the same time, when we focus on our preservation and continuing our charm, we have to focus on the future as well, especially in our downtown. We have a number of old factories and buildings that are focused on the river. Some of those buildings cannot be maintained. They have to be removed and raised so we can focus on moving to the future. Now, in the new buildings that we build, we will still maintain that charm that is Aurora, but we have to focus on moving to the future as well. In our older neighborhoods, my mom lives in one on the west side right now, it's very important that we maintain the sanctity of those communities. So we are always recognized as the city of Aurora. When people ride through and see the architecture in Aurora, they will always recognize our city. It will be different from other cities up and down the river. But again, not only should we focus on preservation and our charm in the city, we have to focus on the future as well.
Well, not every old building should be saved just because it's old, particularly not at taxpayer expense. However, I do believe that Aurora's historic architecture is one of the true rich areas that when you compare us to other cities, we are comparatively so rich in things, and no amount of money alone can buy that kind of history. And so it's important that we preserve it. And I am proud that we've been able to have some very significant historic preservation projects just recently. I mentioned them, some of them in my opening. The St. Charles Hospital, a beautiful, iconic 1932 Art Deco structure. It's preserved for the long haul because we found a new future use, transforming that into senior housing that is now lifting that neighborhood up, and it's got that building back on the tax rolls. The Elks Building is back on the tax rolls through a partnership with David Karadimas. We're working on getting the school district administration building back on the tax rolls. I led the effort to get the Wabansie Community College buildings, the old Carsons, and the Stanley Furniture Stores back on the tax rolls after 3 decades of not being there, with long-term future uses that will be able to make sure they are around for the long haul. And these projects are being done with, other than some TIF assistance, which is what that's there for, at no local taxpayer expense. And so if we're creative, if we're dedicated to the idea of historic preservation, and we realize that this is an important thing for our city, we can preserve our buildings, find new uses, and move into the future at the same time.
Well, I'm glad that Mr. Guzman keeps on saying tax-free dollars. There's no such thing, especially with the St. Charles, which we were able to get $3 million from the state that came in the 11th hour, so I was happy to assist there. So state is very important in these areas. I might be, or my opponent next to me might be the only two that live in a house that's 1886 or older. I live on 4th and Clark, and it's a beautiful home. The issues that we've had, though, is when we replace our windows, if we don't have the right windows of the era, then we have to take them out and put new ones in. So my idea, we still need to revitalize, especially the historical districts, because they do have so much beauty in them. People come here from Chicago to look at our homes because they're so beautiful. But we also need to make it affordable so the people that live there can maintain those homes, because it is really cumbersome to try to find the same materials, the same things that were used originally in it. So I'd like to see more attention put on neighborhood revitalization in every neighborhood, especially the ones that need it the most. They need a little TLC in them. So I think Alderman Seville's done a great job because he has forged a lot of those things in the historical district, and I would love to maintain that, but make sure that we're being reasonable when we're talking to homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, starting with Mr. Irvin and rotating down, this may sound a little bit like a trick question, but I think what it really gets to the heart of why are you a candidate. And the question is, what would you do better than previous mayors have done for Aurora? What is your strength, in other words, in bringing to the office?
That is kind of a trick question. Well, all right. Mayors in the past have built us to where we are today. So let's just go back to Mayor Tom Wisner, the mayor right before us, that I've had the opportunity to work with for the last 10 years. Now, he came into the city and was elected to office, and he had some major decisions to make. Are we going to have a new police department? Are we going to have a new city hall? Are we going to build new roads, new bridges, new expressway ramps? Are we going to install a fiber optic network? Are we going to create the foundation and the infrastructure that we need to build Aurora into the future? And that's what he did. So over the last 10 years, while I've been on the city council, I've worked closely with the mayor to create the foundation that we need to build on, to create that infrastructure we need to attract businesses to the city, to attract new homeowners to the city, to attract people to the city, to put Aurora on the map to stay as the second largest city in the state of Illinois. So what I would do is take Tom's work and everything that we have done as a city council to the next level and build on that by attracting business to the city. It's not about saying that, I'm going to do better than Tom did. I'm going to be the future of what Tom did in the past. We need to look to the future in Aurora if we're going to grow, if we're going to be something more than we have been. And I know we can do so much better. We can be so much more. We just need a visionary leader who's willing to put new ideas into place and ingenuity so we can move to the future.
Well, that definitely feels like a trick question for me here a little bit too, since I worked with Mayor Wisner for the last 5+ years every day. And I've learned a lot from Mayor Wisner, but I think Alderman Irvin's point is well taken, that we do have a great opportunity in front of us to get Aurora to that next level because of a very solid foundation that's been laid. Now, because I've worked for the mayor these past 5 years, I've actually gotten that question a number of times. So here's my answer. My answer is that Mayor Tom Wisner recruited me to come into the office when we were having a problem at Jericho Circle. And he said, hey, this has been a sticking point for a couple of years now. We haven't been able to figure anything out. You're a guy who's created this out-of-the-box solution in the area of housing, so maybe you can come in and help us work together. And it was tough work. We didn't always, we formed a blue ribbon task force to look at the Jericho Circle issue, and we were able to finally come to a solution that said we're going to, instead of rebuilding in Jericho Circle, we're going to bring scattered site housing, we're going to bring outside investment dollars to come in and be able to put in scattered site housing so people can grow up in neighborhoods, and so we can take foreclosed homes, get them back on the tax rolls, get them fixed up, and actually stay on the tax rolls. And so the difference is, it's not so much a difference, it's that I was looked to be able to take a collaborative effort to look at sticky situations and to be able to bring people together and find a common cause and a result that people could agree on. And I think that is one of the strengths that I'll bring to this office.
Okay, so let me focus on economic development because that's probably where we need to go. We need to make sure that everybody understands. Economic development is so important to the city for everything else that we talk about tonight. There's always been a bunch of different great plans that are done by amazing people, but it tends to sit on the shelf here in Aurora. Our surrounding communities are thriving. They're thriving with new housing development, commercial, schools, what have you. And for every success we have in Aurora, we can double down and show you where we lack the successes. If you walk downtown, we have unused properties that taxpayers are paying for right now. We have empty storefronts. Many businesses today questioning, are we really open for business? Because we really make it difficult for them. I have a committee of over 125 businesses that have helped me come up with the ideas on going forward. And there's a continual desire for a quality economic development plan, not just for downtown, but all of Aurora. And what we have is a leapfrog kind of development where we try to develop one thing and then we scatter to another place. I think it's very important that we listen to our constituency that say they want a place where they can walk to shop, they can go to eat, they can have a safe neighborhood, and they can actually feel like the city's welcoming and wants business to come into the city. We have great bone structure, and I will work tirelessly to make sure that our economic development, our jobs plan is in place, and we're bringing back the money so we can finally give you a rebate on your taxes.
Well, I think that's a very good question. And I think I bring a unique talent to the position of elected mayor. A couple of reasons why. I've served with the last 5 mayors, going back, as I mentioned, 1980, with Mayor Hill, Pierce, Stover, Weiser, and now O'Connor. And each of them brought a particular ability and talent and leadership that I think the city of Aurora benefited from. However, I bring a talent with my 9 terms as alderman that is unique because I've been listening to people for the last 32 years. So my talent is the ability to listen to what people have to say and formulate policy. I've been very aggressive with helping people. I don't look for band-aid solutions, I look for long-term solutions. I've been mentioning again throughout the campaign, past this prologue. If you want to see what I'm going to be like, look at what I've done. Go to my website, again, that catchy name, MikeSevilleForMayor.com. Look at what I did. You can get a great idea as to how I formulate policy, how I think, and how I help people. Because it's all about being of service, looking what's going on, forming coalitions, getting the votes, crafting legislation, working with different people, not only on the city council, but the mayor's staff, our state representatives, state senators, Foxroy Park District, County Board, Aurora Township. I know everybody in town. I am very effective at doing that.
Okay, question 3. Mr. Guzman. Continue Aurora's reputation as a green community. Why or why not?
Well, it absolutely is essential to continue Aurora's reputation as a green community, and we've done some really great things and again, particularly under the leadership of Mayor Tom Weisner. We've been recognized as one of the greenest cities in the country at different points. We've cleaned up some really horrible brownfields, like the Kitty Car site that's downtown on the river. The very site where River Edge Park is today is a former brownfield. We've been able to return these beautiful spaces back to something that everybody can enjoy. We have more opportunities to be able to take, Aurora is this industrial town over the years. Because we are an older town, we put a lot of our industry right on the river. That was kind of the old way of doing things. There's this postcard I love in the Historical Society. You can go to their shop and you can find this postcard that says Aurora, City of Factories. And there's all these smokestacks that are polluting all over the place. It was a point of pride. People didn't realize, they didn't know better at the time. But those factories don't need to be on the river anymore. We have opportunities to return those either to be places that we can all enjoy, that we can bring people to attract, or spots for investment, for housing, to be able to have people want to come and live on the river right near our train station. We have an amazing opportunity. If we don't continue our efforts to clean up the river and return it, we'll be missing out on one of our biggest opportunities.
So in Springfield, I'm part of the Green Caucus, and back about 14 years ago, I was able and honored to carry the River's Edge redevelopment program in the state of Illinois. And what it was is for brownfields along rivers that were cost prohibitive for developers to develop. To date, about $33 million has come back into Aurora from your tax dollars back here that created River's Edge Park. We only, the city put in $500,000. You had the Fox Park District. You had the state put in quite a few. I think it was over $8 million just for that location. But we actually helped out other properties clean up their waste. It's extremely important, especially in today's day. I'm also the chair of energy in the House of Representatives, so I've been able to work with a lot of people coming up with ideas on how we can go forward for the state with solar and wind and hydro. It's so important that we start to believe in ourselves enough as a state and a city that we can control our own destiny and bring down the costs of a lot of the energy costs that you have to pay when we can do it with large fields of solar panels and co-opting. I also have a committee that's working with me on environmental issues for Aurora itself, so you will have a sustainable city. So I am really excited about the element for the city of Aurora.
I think it's important to maintain and build upon Aurora as being a green city. In fact, we all know we get our water from the Fox River, so we have to do that. We have no choice, and we want to do that. I've been green for so long, even before it was trendy, because in 1986 I proposed the Riverwalk Commission. And the reason why I did that in those days is not only, as I mentioned earlier, I was born and raised in Aurora, but I know the beauty of the Fox River firsthand because I've commuted it. I've been in the middle of it. So in 1986, I thought it was time to have a Riverwalk Commission because I knew at the time the Forest Preserve and the Fox River Park District was extending their bike trails down through Aurora. They haven't done it yet, but I knew that the plans were on the book, but it was going to be dead-ending on New York Street. And eventually the plan was supposed to go south of the downtown to connect Montgomery and Oswego, etc. But nobody was talking about the downtown. So that's why I thought, well, we need a Riverwalk. We need a Riverwalk in conjunction with economic development. So we need a Riverwalk for recreational purposes to connect the bike trails, and that's what we've done. You can bike and walk through the downtown now, all the way down to Oswego. I think also I've been green because I approved and co-sponsored the roundabout. For those of you who've been in the new roundabout in my ward in Sullivan and Highland Avenue, a great thing. It saves costs to build instead of a traffic signalization. Save costs in the long run, no electricity. People don't hit the light poles, and we had to replace those. So it saves money and it moves traffic efficiently and saves gasoline too. So I think we need to build on that.
You know, I was at a barbecue over the summer, meeting with some folks talking about my run for mayor of Aurora. A young lady asked me, she's 19 years old, you know, what about Aurora makes us so special? Why Aurora versus any other city? You know, and I had to pause for a second to think about what this young lady was asking me and why and how I would answer the question. And the first thing that came to my mind, and I've said this a million times, was this beautiful river that runs through our city. Now, I absolutely think being green in Aurora is important, so important that I think we should not, over the past decades, we've turned our back away from this beautiful Fox River. We have to turn our faces back toward it. Matter of fact, one of the first things I want to do as mayor is work to remove the dams in Aurora so we can boat all the way up from north all the way down south to give access, you know, from the north to the south in boats. I want to remove those dams so we can actually use this river, I believe, the way that the Aurora should be using it. You know, it's not only this beautiful thing that happens to run through our city, but a way we can sell and market ourselves as having access from the north to the south. That's one of the first things I want to work on, moving those dams so we can enjoy the Fox River throughout the city.
This is a question about your mentors, perhaps, or whatever, however you want to respond. Have you emulated any elected officials, and who are your heroes?
one of my heroes, or two of my heroes are right here, my mom and dad, of course. My mom was the very first real estate broker in Aurora, female, and a minority, more than 40 years ago. And my father and my mother are from Texas, and they were cotton pickers. And they came here for a better life for their family, and they gave that to us. My dad was a UAW member for Caterpillar, 5th grade education, and they gave him a shot. So it wasn't just a paycheck from a union, it was a livelihood that allowed me to be where I'm at and standing today. So I'm very proud of that. If I had to emulate one policy maker that's alive today, I would probably have to say, well, he's not alive, he's dead. I got to meet him about 6 months before he passed away, is Paul Simon. He was an amazing person. He was probably one of the when I was elected, the first person I wanted to really meet to get to know, because his life still lives on. The legacy of his work and his think tank is still living on, benefiting everybody. So I would have to say Paul Simon.
Well, I was going to, let me say this, I would agree with Paul Simon as well. I had occasion to have lunch with Paul Simon and Mrs. Simon when he was senator at the Royal Pancake House. What nice, down-home people, and he was a great leader. In terms of a leader that I admire too, I won't say her last name because I'm sure I'll butcher it, but her first name is Malala. If you remember who she was actually shot in the head for advocating women's rights and survived, and to this day she's still advocating for that. So I would say she's a true hero with true courage. On a local level, I have to say, you might have seen in the paper today, the article on Chet Albright. I've known the Albright family since I was practically born. He used to cut my hair when I was 6 years old at Northgate Barbershop. He's a Moose grad, and he's not only my friend, but my mentor. He's the one that first got me my start in politics and government, recommending my appointment to the Planning Commission in 1980. And then when he vacated the alderman position of the 6th Ward, together we have 40 years of service for the 6th Ward residents. He recommended one thing for me when I was appointed by Dave Pierce. He says, Mike, whatever you do, don't forget your constituents. Always give them great service and listen to what they have to say. And I've been trying to implement his legacy ever since. And he's just a great, great man and a good family.
You know, let me just say that I can say that someone that affected my life tremendously. I grew up without a father in my household, and my father was my grandfather. And my grandfather was the son of a slave. So my great-grandfather, Richard Baxter Irvin, was actually born a slave and settled here in the Aurora area, actually in Oswego. And then my grandfather moved to Aurora. My grandfather, even though he grew up in 40s and 50s with racism, told me stories about having on the back of the bus and you know, not being able to drink out of the same water fountain as people. And if he was allowed into a restaurant, he had to go all the way to the back and order. Yet he was still strong. He didn't finish grade school. Taught himself how to read. Taught himself how to do math. And he instilled in me that everything you do well and never give up. So that is the person that I most admire and that gave me the strength. As far as politicians, you know, I can say I really don't like politicians that much. they tend to care about themselves versus the people. The question was asked by The Voice, who would I emulate that is well known that people might know. And you know, a person that came to mind that you may recognize locally is this guy named Father Flair. He is working in the hood in Chicago, but he doesn't have to be. Working in the hood, helping people that need to be helped, just because he believes that believes in people and believes that somebody should do something. I'm about doing something for people that can't help themselves.
Well, I had the most time to think about this, but I still couldn't narrow it down to just one. And a couple is because I also have to recognize my mother who's here today. My parents instilled in me the value of service. The very first year Hesed House opened, my dad had me down there on our monthly church night to volunteer. I did that my entire childhood. And my parents instilled in me some wonderful values that have stayed with me for a long time. I got to drive Paul Simon to the airport, so I might as well chime in with Paul Simon too. I worked with him on the Capital Punishment Commission when Governor Ryan declared a moratorium on the death penalty, and I got to work with him, and I was in every one of those meetings and got to work and admire his leadership. And so I would echo that. I think there's been some great answers. I've gotten to learn from Mayor Tom Weisner and to learn about the importance of understanding what every single department has to do and how that, and you know, he worked his way up through so many departments, and he brought that depth of knowledge about the importance of all of those departments working together. And he brought in, you know, unlikely departments to actually help turn our city's crime around. But ultimately, you know, recently I gave the answer of Bill and Melinda Gates. And I'll tell you why. Because they took, they're innovators, first of all, very successful people, and they know that they have been blessed tremendously. And they took their blessings and they used it to help unlock the potential in other people. That's what their foundation is about. And they know that a blessing isn't a blessing unless you turn it around to help other people. And I admire that, and I would seek to emulate that as well.
Okay, good answers. As an objective newspaper man, I think we have 4 good candidates, but now I'd like to have a little interaction. We'll start at the other end, Mike Seville. If you would start with that, if you have a question for any of the other 3 candidates, we want just one question for one candidate each.
Okay, my question is, throughout my campaign I've been advocating for immediate property tax relief. And how you do that is you change the school funding formula. We're 47th out of 50 states in the union. We're almost at last. The state of Michigan, over 3 years ago, changed their school funding formula, where they had a preponderance of reliance on property taxes overnight. That's what I'm striving for. And I asked Linda, how would you cut property taxes for our city?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I actually have 2 bills in with Warren Dixon right now that are property tax relief, and I've voted over the years for property tax relief. Whether it's disabled veteran who doesn't have to pay any taxes, or it's homestead for our seniors. But the real quagmire in this city is that we have so much property that's not paying taxes, that are owned by nonprofits, school districts, or the city of Aurora. Now that's a waste, because we're not collecting anything off of that. So the real intention here is to get in with the assessor's office and seeing how we can turn these properties around so we can have them paying taxes again, their fair share of taxes. It's okay to start talking about state stuff, but I'm running for mayor of Aurora, not the governor of the state of Illinois. Okay, I'm running for mayor, and what I can control and what I can advocate here for you is getting new business in here so we can lower your taxes, making sure we fill the empty buildings that are not paying taxes right now so we can lower your taxes. And because we'll be doing that, we'll actually put more money into the school system. We have a really exciting plan that's coming out next week that we'll be sharing with you next week on some really amazing stuff that's not going to cost our taxpayers anything. But having the ability to really go back to the books with the assessor's office, find out every property that's not paying taxes, and how we put those back on the rolls. That is going to save us money. That is going to go into taxpayers' pockets, because then you won't be paying so much for the schools. Thank you, Mike.
You know, I was going to ask Rick a question, but based on something that Ms. Chapman just said, I have to ask her a question. Right. All right. You just said you're running for mayor of Aurora, and you're not. You want to pay attention. Pay attention. You got to listen to me when I ask the question. So anyway, right. I know. So anyway, the question is, you know, you're running for mayor of Aurora, but you've been educated in Springfield for the last 14 years, and I think you said 15 when we were in a debate before. So your education has come from there. We all recognize here in this room that Springfield is broken. You're $150 million in debt. You know, $150 billion with a B. You know, $130 billion in arrears, paying liabilities for pensions, and yet you, for the 7th time in a row, voted to put Mike Madigan back in as speaker and continue to do the same thing over and over again. Why would you do that, recognizing that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's insanity, and nothing is ever going to change?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question. So the leadership in this state and federal government, which I've been endorsed by both U.S. senators, and leadership on the Republican and Democratic side in Illinois right now, have a lot of faith in me in doing what we need to do here in Aurora. It's not just one person that's in Springfield. I'm one of 118. You didn't know that? And there's 59 senators, okay? So the true issue here is people not having the courage to do what they need to do to put more money into the coffers, to make sure we're paying what we need to pay in this state. And sometimes our founding fathers didn't organize our Constitution so that we can, I'll get to that, so that we can stay in those positions forever. I've also voted for term limits for executive directors. I mean executive branch, okay? 51 people voted for Durkin, or Leader Durkin in the House, and that's a party split, and the rest voted for leadership in the House under the Democratic leadership, okay? There was no difference, there was no deviation. That's how we operate at that level. But whoever secures the position for mayor and represents you has to know to work with the state and the federal government to get what we need done. We cannot be short-sighted and timid when it comes to allowing people to get the resources that you pay to get back here so we can have a second city we can all be proud of. If you look at the city, it's less than that in certain places. And we need to get that shine back here. So I'm very proud to be able to have a relationship with both sides out at the federal and state level to get what we need and deserve here in Aurora.
So I guess I won't ask my question of Linda. We'll ask a question. I'll ask Mike a question. And the question is, we've talked a lot about economic development and the importance of it and being able to bring more of it to our city. So the question is, what experience do you have in being able to directly put together economic development deals to bring to our city?
Well, as I've been saying, I've been on the city council for 9 terms now, and I have literally voted since 1980, including the Planning Commission, billions and billions of dollars of economic development. No other candidate can say that. I've watched the city of Aurora grow from a little bit over 80,000 to over 200,000 today. So as part of my purview of being on the Planning Commission and being on as an alderman, I was able to review all those documents and get a very good understanding as to not only what's being presented, but why and what the benefits are. So I've been able to learn for the last almost 36 years with my age of dedication for the community about economic development. So I don't need training. I can begin from day one to promote the economic development that we need in our city, and that's why I'm a strong proponent of adopting the smart economy, like Chattanooga has done, like Santa Monica has done, like Kansas City has done. They laid a fiber optic network for their city, and now they're known as a quote-unquote gigabyte city. We have over 47 miles of fiber optic network throughout the city. That is why all these have come to Corporate Boulevard to locate there, because they want the ability to download 100 gigabytes per second with the idea of expanding to 200 gigabytes per second. That's what I'm saying that we need to do, is to become a gigabyte city. It means high-paying jobs and growing the economy by getting new businesses in our community.
Your turn. Mr. Kemper, ask a question.
Oh. I could. They were getting all
You don't have to give all the answers to the questions.
Thank you. So kind. So this question goes to Mr. Guzman, if I can find it, because it was last minute that we asked that. I've received endorsements from both U.S. Senators, the Police Benevolence and Protection Association, the Aurora Fire Department, all of the city employee unions, the Education Committee, Early Learning Coalitions of Aurora, members of the Aurora business community, Republican officials, the National Social Work Association, and many other leaders and organizations. Do you feel that all national, state, and local entities are wrong to have recognize my value, my accomplishment, my leadership, my vision, because I have worked in Springfield?
Well, I understand that there are a number of folks, unions and Democrats, and some of your colleagues you've worked with for a long time that have endorsed you. I understand that there are folks who worked in the city who have done the work in our police force and our fire department, and who have led those and have understood what it takes to actually lead in our city, who have chosen other folks. The past two police chiefs, Greg Thomas and Bill Powell, have both endorsed me. The past fire chief, our former chief judge of the 16th Circuit, the township supervisor for Naperville Township, where 50,000 residents live. We've got 50,000 Aurora residents live in Naperville Township. So there are people who make different decisions, and many of them are based on relationships, certainly. Many of them are based on, many of the folks who have endorsed me know us all well. Many of the folks who have endorsed you some of the folks, I should say, who endorsed you, I think just two of the unions took the time to actually ask us any questions, or to actually look and evaluate. Only one of them asked us to submit written answers. And so, these things are done for different reasons. We all have people who are supporting us. And so I'm proud of the folks who are supporting me. I'm proud to have people who've been in positions in local leadership in the city of Aurora who've said they believe that I would be the next best man.